tell me, lie to tell me. It's as if my talent is trying my patience, and every word you say to me is just another erase, and I'm tired of the lie to tell me, lie to tell me.
All right, my friends, we're going to try this again. So I want to ask a question. I want everybody to think about this for a minute. Every time we post an article about modern monetary theory, or we post an article about a Green New Deal, the haters come out, they won't read any of it. They won't read anything by an MMT economist. They won't read anything by, anybody. I mean, literally anything that's of substance that actually lays out the groundwork for a Green New Deal or for modern monetary theory, so we can have, I don't know, free college, silly things like Medicare for all, paid family medical leave, a federal job guarantee, silly stuff like that. They won't read that. But the minute you see some stupid article, I mean, the dumbest of the dumb articles that are talking shit about MMT, my inbox fills up with people going, hey, look at this. What about this? And I keep thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great to bring everybody in to a political mosh pit, into Grumbine's political mosh pit, and have a dance? Let's just have a dance. Have a dance off, There's no fighting. There's no fist fighting. There's no guns in play. It's just a wall of death. There's people stage diving. There's people slamming into each other. Good, friendly, violent fun for all. And I wonder how many people would actually continue dumping these stupid MMT haterades at us that they haven't even bothered to read. The worst part is they don't even know what they're talking about. The worst part is they don't even know what they're talking about. They just come back and they send you some article and they want you to debunk it suddenly. They want you to debunk what they don't even know. They don't even understand what they read to begin with. They've never read the original MMT literature. But they want you to debunk their debunked article, their garbage shit article. I don't understand why that is, but it is. So what I did, Scott Fulwiler, who was one of the great MMT minds, got the same article I got from CNBC. And these articles, mind you, are always like blinding flashes of the obvious. They're easily debunked. They're stupid stuff. And it amazes me how good progressives hang out with people that get this shit wrong and treat them like it's okay. To me, somebody gets economics wrong, it's almost like using the N-word, or somebody sitting there and being a bigot. The economics are what kills us more than anything, right? What do you think it is that prevents us from having health care? Do you think it's just that they don't like us, or do you think it's economics? It's economics, I assure you. Do you think that they just like wars for oil and stuff like that because they like wars for oil? No, it's economics. Economics is what blocks us from having green energy. It's greed. So when we sit there and present economic truth, and people sit there, instead of learning that, they go ahead and bring about the debunk articles, it tells you something about their character. It tells you something about who they are. It tells you about what they value. And so I figured, let's all just jump into a mosh pit and see where it takes us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this scene here. And this right here is the article, okay, of that Scott Fulwiler pulled out. And hopefully when you see this, you'll understand. Scott Fulwiler had some fun with this. He basically said, hey, seriously, Fitch, Russia and Brazil, you really think we did this for 40 plus years and they never came up? There may be more to MMT than you think. Now, mind you, folks, I'm not nearly as kind. And I'm not nearly as kind because these guys are academics. And academics have to play in academic circles. I don't suffer from any such illusions. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and pulled up this shit article, and I'm going to read it to you. And here we go. She says, the big spending economic theory pushed by AOC and others has gotten a big fact wrong, rating agencies say. Modern monetary theory is a relatively new idea that says public debt and deficits are manageable and even desirable when trying to reduce wealth inequality. A Fitch rating system official says MMT supporters get one key fact wrong in asserting that governments that pay bills in their own currency can never default. And then following the theory could imperil the U.S. dollar's global standing. Haven't we heard this shit before? So here we go. A government that prints its own currency can never go bust, or so runs an increasingly influential mantra. The US and UK could never default like Greece or Argentina, right? This jackass says wrong. A string of countries, including ones like Brazil and Russia, have defaulted on their own currencies, and not just in times of war. The idea has gained ground. Advocates call it modern monetary theory, that the government creates money or government bonds, a virtual substitute. Therefore, it can always pay its bills. Fears of debt, sustainability should be the last of anyone's worries. Obsessing over the deficit is unnecessary. It is no more than accounting identity, the counterpart of saving by the private sector or by obliging foreigners. Indeed, deficit spending is the government's duty, at least during a downturn, since it is the only real source of economic stimulus, or so the theory goes. So he adds in a Kelton thing. He says, it's understandable that frustrated progressives in the U.S., including some of the new crop of Democrats in the House, have turned to this idea like it's the boogeyman. Even the IMF agrees that the U.S. would benefit from more spending on public goods financed by higher taxes and more redistribution to everyone's. Anyway, they go on and on and on. Okay? They go on and on and on. And he's like, spare also a thought for the rest of the world. Massive stimulus in the U.S. would initially lead to higher interest rates and push up the value of the U.S. dollar, would have major spillovers for emerging markets and dollar borrowers around the world. The likely sequel with a slumping dollar shunned by the rest of the world would be no less disruptive. I'll tell you, folks, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to show you the rest of Fulwiler's tweets because they're epic. So when you look here, Scott's like, seriously, Fitch, Russia and Brazil, you really think, let me pull this back up. You really think we did this for 20 plus years and they never came up? There may be more to MMT than you think. And so it's like, what's the best article I should read to understand neoclassical economics, said nobody ever. Well, anyway, let's go in here. Let's talk about this real quick. It's like, if only MMT economists had been clear that monetary sovereignty is about not having debt in foreign currency and not having to defend a fixed exchange rate, like maybe in an early foundational piece by, say, Warren Mosler. And there you go. He breaks it down. Exchange rate policy and full employment. Now, these links are available in the actual description, so don't worry about it. We'll get to that later. But then you come down here and he says, if only MMT economists had been clear about these 2 points and maybe published econometric studies illustrating the importance of the distinction. A modern money perspective on financial crowding out. Look, It's all there. The withdrawal of discretionary fiscal stimulus and renewed emphasis on institutional and self-imposed budgetary constraints are evidence that the imperative of fiscal sustainability and sound accounting fundamentals continue to drive fiscal policy making within many advanced economies. To buttress the urgency for fiscal sustainability, neoliberals often draw upon financial crowding out theory. Despite an extensive literature, empirical applications are often misspecified due to their failure to account for different institutional arrangements. However, the policy responses of national governments to the global financial crisis have highlighted the institutional disparities, presenting a unique opportunity for a rigorous empirical investigation. Anyway, the point is that once again, they hit it out of the park, this nonsense of financial overcrowding based on modern monetary theory. The next one. If only MMT economists had clarified this in response to Reinhart Rogoff's study. In this brief, we present a third view that receives virtually no media attention. We argue that today's deficits do not burden future generations with debt that must be repaid, nor do they crowd out private spending now or in the future. The Reinhart and Rogoff findings and both of the conventional views cannot be applied to the situation of the United States or to any other nation that operates within a sovereign currency, that is a national currency with a floating exchange rate and no promise to convert to another currency at a fixed exchange rate. He goes on to slam it once again. If only founding MMT scholars like Billy Blog, in other words, Bill Mitchell, and Warren Mosler had very recently clarified this point. And once again, in MMT, currency issuing countries that do not borrow in foreign currencies or peg their currencies by any arrangement are sovereign in that currency. And he says, I could literally go on and on for days, but it doesn't really matter since MMT critics currently have no interest in actually reading anything by MMT scholars, and instead waste everyone's time by shooting down straw men with their soundbite version of MMT. And then he goes on to add a Nathan Tankus tweet, Modern Monetary Network, or Modern Money Network, and it says, if only MMT scholars wrote about Brazil, and if only MMT organizations did events on Brazil. Anyway, this, folks, I mean, you all can think about this however you want, but for me, I'm enraged. I'm disgusted. I am out of my mind raging because there's so many morons out there that think they have a right to speak, that think they have a right to flap gums about this stuff. Now, you all can just say, oh, it's economics, or oh, it's just that silly MMT thing. But for those of us with children, those of us who have been without health care, those of us who are struggling under the weight of student debt, those of us who have major problems financially based on a neoliberal worldview and the way that the austerity has been in this nation, this isn't a funny thing. When these fucktards get it wrong, when they get it wrong and they screw it up and they don't bother reading the literature, when these assholes get it wrong, they're not just getting a semantic issue wrong. They're killing you and I. They're the ones that are keeping you from getting that surgery you needed. They're the ones that are preventing you from being able to spend time with your family because both parents need to work because these ass crystals have decided to mock economic literacy. Now, you could sit there and you could say you're going to chase after this third party or chase after that, but I'm telling you right now, anyone that gets this stuff wrong is in no way, shape, or form a friend of yours or mine. They could choose to humble themselves and admit that they don't know. They could choose to admit they don't know the answers. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being ignorant. We're all ignorant at some point, right? But there is something worthless, disgusting, lesser, to act like you know and to degrade MMT, but yet you've never read the literature. You don't know your ass from your elbow. You are worthless, undeserving, because you're killing people with your idiocy. Again, there's no harm in not knowing. There's no harm in not knowing, because that can be fixed. That just takes effort. But for those people that don't support and understand what we're talking about here, the goal is not to put it down. The goal is to learn, because a Green New Deal hangs in the balance. A Green New Deal, healthcare for all these things hang in the balance. Every last one of them is going to be asked point blank by these morons, how are you going to pay for it? And then you're going to get the beta-o-wrongs who are going to say, oh, it's far too expensive. It's far too divisive. We couldn't possibly. And they're going to sound like the smart, sane centrist once again, even though they are economically illiterate, leading us off a cliff. Now, you can sit there and make excuses for these people all day long. I'm done. I'm not making excuses for them anymore. People are suffering. People are dying for real. This is not a joke. This is not a game. They can jump in the mosh pit. We can see how long they last. Or they could just start learning economics so that we can survive. Folks, don't have a long fuse on this stuff. The information's been there. It's time to get angry. You know that never lose your sense of outrage? It needs to be directed towards the people that are holding us back from having a Green New Deal. It needs to be directed at the people that mock economic literacy and MMT, those that mock it. Your anger and rage needs to be pointed at those economists, those politicians, those institutions. The people that suckle up to those dumb institutions that would sideline MMT, they're just dumbasses. They're not the power brokers. So for these people out there that are actually screwing us up and really putting us in a bind, I got an award for them. And here it goes.